So can you tell me more about pelvic floor dysfunction? For me, I'm not going to understand it as much, but I want to make sure that all of our listeners really understand. How did you know something was wrong? What's the pain like?
Empowering you organically, delivering content you trust with results you love.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Empowering You Organically. I'm your host, Jonathan Hunsaker, joined by my co-host, Terry Ann Trevenin.
Hey everyone.
We have a very, very special guest today, Isa Herrera. Terry Ann, tell us a little bit more about Isa.
Of course. Isa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I am so super excited. Thank you, Terry Ann and Jonathan.
Isa is a licensed physical therapist as well as an expert in integrative pelvic floor therapies. She developed her expertise in diagnosing and treating pelvic pain, leaking, and prolapse by helping over 14,000 women since 2005 at her New York City healing center, Renew PT. Isa pioneered the use of integrative modalities like Maya massage, cold laser therapy, sound healing, and Undead energy techniques with evidence-based physical therapy in ways that had never been done before. She is also the author of 5 books on the topic of pelvic floor dysfunction and pain, including the newly released international bestseller, Pelvic Alchemy. Isa's new online school, www.pelvicpainrelief.com, brings all of her expertise to a global audience, incorporating exercises, self-care techniques, and integrative tools to maximize female healing and professional training. After suffering from pelvic floor dysfunction herself after the birth of her daughter, Isa has made it her life's mission to help 1 million women overcome pelvic floor dysfunction. So Isa, I think that's a really good place to start. Tell us a little bit about your journey with your story with pelvic floor dysfunction, what happened with you, and how you got to the point where you are now helping other women.
Sure. Great question. Thank you, Terry Ann. You know, they say when lightning strikes, it can just strike you down, right? And strike you down really hard. And I was a physical therapist in PT school, and I had been a personal trainer for almost, I don't know, probably a decade before I had my daughter, but I knew nothing about what could happen to your body after you had a baby. Even in PT school, it wasn't covered. It wasn't covered in any of my classes. So when I had my daughter, it was absolutely shocking what happened to my body. And I went over and over again to many different kinds of practitioners and doctors, what I call the Dr. Roadshow, you know, and no one was really well versed in pelvic floor dysfunction. And so, you know, after going through, you know, tons of work and tons of things, I decided that I was going to pivot my entire life and dedicate my life to helping women because, you know, honestly, what I went through was so harsh and so terrible. I just really didn't want another woman suffering like I did.
So can you tell me more about pelvic floor dysfunction? For me, I'm not going to understand it as much, but I want to make sure that all of our listeners really understand. How did you know something was wrong? What's the pain like? You know,
Yeah. Well, even before that, like, let's set the context of what is the pelvic floor.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
What's go wrong with it?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the pelvic floor it's like the cradle of your being, right? They're your vaginal muscles. They're the muscles that hold everything up. They support your organs. They have a primary function in sexuality, stability. And these muscles are like any other muscle in the body. They need to be exercised. They need to be massaged. They need to be, you know, strengthened, relaxed. And so when these muscles go crazy or when there's an issue with them, whether they're too tight or too weak, you can get issues like urine leaking when you cough, sneeze, or laugh. You can have pain with intimacy. You can have pain when you're sitting. You can suffer from defecation. You can suffer from having to go to the bathroom all the time. And sometimes women have this deep pressure in the pelvis, and that can be a pelvic organ prolapse because the muscles are not holding things up like they should, right? So the thing with pelvic floor dysfunction is that it can almost mean anything, right? Because the pelvic floor, they're the conduit between the upper and the lower body. They're like centrally located, like the first chakra, 17 meridian lines. When there's something, when they go wrong or something's happening with them, it can be like so many different symptoms, but the ones that I describe are the most popular, you know, the most common ones.
And does it generally just occur after childbirth? Does it just could it just happen over time? Your pelvic muscles get weaker and weaker, and then issues get worse and worse. I mean, I know with my sisters, I know with others, you know, after having a baby, they don't even want to go jump on the trampoline, right?
Exactly.
Because it's like, oh no, you know, going to leak out or different things like that. So help us understand when it can happen, how it happens, all of that.
You want to hear a crazy a statistic, Jonathan, that really took me aback, is that 37% of collegiate athletes suffer from leaking and incontinence, sometimes urinary incontinence, sometimes fecal incontinence. And that was really shocking to me because I always thought that it was a new mom's issue, right? But it's really not. It's a human issue. It really is. It affects men too, by the way. So, but with women, it can happen at any time when there's a big dramatic change in their lives, either a hormonal change, or there's been a surgery, or there's been a change in activity, or there's been some trauma to the pelvis, or there's even been some psychological trauma too, because these muscles do have a big, deep effect, you know, when something goes wrong, when there's been some trauma.
So tell me, you know, you talked a little bit about some of the issues that women can face with this. Talk about the emotional side of it, because, you know, we talk about all these ways to having optimal health, and it's not just the physical side of it, but what have you experienced in your work with women? As you've been talking, I've been thinking about, you know, how does this really impact people? Yes, it's a physical impact that impacts the body, but talk about the emotional impact you've seen in both women and men from having this issue and how it impacts their life.
Oh, the impact is so dramatic. I mean, it's so dramatic. I mean, when women come to me, typically they're at the end of their rope. You know, many of them are depressed. Many of them, you know, feel like they don't know, their bodies have betrayed them. They're losing their connection with their loved ones, and sometimes not only just with the partner, because there's an issue of, you know, connection, not being able to have sex, or maybe sex is too painful. But then they start to internalize everything and feel like there's something very deeply wrong with them, right? Because we don't teach about pelvic health in schools. We don't teach about it. You know, now it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. But we don't, you know, you start to think there's something very deeply wrong with you. So many of them are depressed. A lot of them suffer in shame and in silence. You know, even in my community and my programs, you know, women say, oh, I don't want to go on Facebook. I don't want anybody to know, because I have small communities where they can come in and we can just bond and talk to each other. And they're like, ooh, don't mention my name. And I said, this is part of the problem, right? Because we are so, there's so much shame around it that we're like, I don't want to tell anybody. But I think the more we talk about it, which is why I'm so grateful to be on this podcast, because I know it's going to reach a lot of women, and let them know that just because it's common, right? 30 million women in the US have sexual pain, doesn't make it normal. There's something that you can do about it. There's always hope, right? And you just have to take, you know, you just got to take that power back.
Yeah. And there's a community out there too. You know, I think sometimes we think you know, you suffer in silence, but you're not alone. You know, more people talk to about it, more people to support it. I think when you realize more people, you know, have this issue, there's a sense of humanity in it, that you're not alone, that there's other people around, there's other people to support you, which really supports the emotional side of it, which I think is super important. So really quickly, let's touch, you talked about a few of the symptoms that people might see, but let's really go through the list. So what are the signs and symptoms that women or men can see to know that this may be an issue in their life, to actually put a name to the problem that they're facing?
Okay, if you're looking for Mr. Good Bathroom everywhere you go, every 5 minutes, that's a pelvic floor issue. There's something going on. That's a message your body is communicating with you. Sometimes menstrual cramps, right? Definitely. With men, sometimes it's frequent urination or erectile dysfunction, or things are not getting as hard as they used to, right? For women, sometimes it's weak or poor orgasms or no orgasms at all, right? Sometimes constipation. Leaking, I mean, the back pain, because back pain and pelvic floor dysfunction, they're like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They love each other. One's pissed off, the other one gets pissed off, right? What else? Oh my God, there's so many things. Hip pain, sciatica is deeply connected, because the pelvic floors are connected to everything, right? They're connected to your back, to your hips, to your thighs. So if there's an issue in any other body, the pelvic floor is the one that takes the brunt of it, which is why it has to be really strong and flexible and supple and open, not just like, you know, doing this all day long.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and just that, I mean, I would imagine you're talking about Kegels.
Yes,
right?
I am.
We've all heard about doing that, do the squeeze, right? So are Kegels, is that the right thing to do? Are Kegels good? Does that solve all the problems?
You know, I wish that I could solve everyone's problems with the Kegels or Kegels, however you want to say them, but I can't, because what happens with Kegel, this thing is called Kegel tension syndrome. And that's when women are constantly tightening their vaginas, because why? There's a head game, right, that's played on us, that we have to feel that we have to have really tight vaginas, right? That we have to have it tight so we can please our partners. But this is not true. When you're tight, you become more dysfunctional, because the pelvic floor muscles have to be supple and open. So if you do a Kegel, if you're contracting and squeezing, then you have to do the reverse Kegel, which is something that I coined about 12 years ago. And you have to open and release, because these muscles are all about receptivity. They're about opening and receiving, right? And they're also about creativity because of the first chakra, if you believe, that energy stuff. So, and I do. So, I mean, wow, that's a lot of what it involves,
Talk a little bit about that for listeners who may not know. I'm actually familiar with that, but talk about it for people who don't know, from your experience and your perspective, the first chakra, and explain for our listeners who may not be educated on that.
Perfect. So the first chakra is the pelvic floor, and it's like the roof or the basement for all the other chakras, right? Whether you believe there's 721, there's many different, philosophies, but it has meridian lines running through it. So it's got a lot of energetics, and it's the seed of creation. Like, a lot of people believe like that's when you get really creative, and you can like write a novel if your vagina is like singing like a bird and it's so happy, right? Or if something goes wrong with that chakra, then we guard, right? We are distrustful. We don't believe, especially with all the trauma that happens to women. All we have to look as the Time's Up and the Me Too movement, and we know, right, that there's been trauma. And these muscles, they hold on to trauma, right? And so women basically close themselves down and then just don't, they lose that connection, not only to themselves, but to their families and their partners. So I think when that chakra, when the pelvic floor muscles are humming and they're singing and they're fantastic and they're strong, then a woman, you ever see like these women that walk in the room and you're like, damn, she's got to have a good pelvic floor, that you're like, I look at people, I'm like, oh, that's that problem.
Those are the exact words that go through my head. I'm like, that pelvic floor.
And then I'm looking for symmetry in the pelvis, right? Because the pelvis, and I'm looking for because I can analyze the body really simply by looking at it. So I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. Or I can say, oh, problem there,
Oh, awesome. It's almost like a second gut. Like, that's what I was thinking about when you're talking about it, like a second sense in the body. And, you even talked about, women holding on to trauma there, but if men suffer from this as well, then it's an issue for them too. Like, think about that and your emotional energy and your energy in your body. And it's not just a women's issue, it's a men's issue as well. And yeah, I can't say that I ever like see a guy walking by and I was like, look at his energy, that's his pelvic floor, but it's the same thing.
It's the same thing, right? You're like, oh, he's hot, right?
Yes. But it just sounds to me in my head like that gut instinct, that those things that really fill you up, those things that you just innately know about yourself and the world and the people around you. So it's just a very powerful concept. So
I love it.
So let's talk a little bit about when someone may think that they're having an issue with their pelvic floor. Just like anything else, I'm sure there's all these people out here who know about it and all these people out there who don't know about it. So what would be the first step that, if they're listening today and they're like, okay, I deal with that and that and that, like some of these things that she's been talking about, they're going to go out and research it. And they're like, what's the first step? Like, what steps should people take as far as action in correcting this in their health? What would you recommend to people?
Oh, there's so many things because they're so deeply connected. I mean, you can do, yoga, you can do meditation, you can do foam rolling, but you always want to rule something out organically wrong, right? Like something that's not right in the body. So you can go see your functional medicine doctor, because I believe that with the pelvic floor dysfunction, you need a team. But you're the master and you're the captain of your own team, and you don't want to give that away to anyone, right? So the most important thing is to have a good team behind you, but also you may want to check to rule out if there's an infection, right? And then you want to, I'm really big on natural healing, so I'm not big on meds or things over the counter to put on your vagina or anything like that, because, I've seen situations where these medications, they have so many side effects. And instead of making things better, they make things worse, right? So the thing is, like, how do you want to treat it, right? I'm big on only natural therapies because I know that massage, Kegels, reverse Kegels, foam rolling, yoga, abdominals, everything works because this is a physical issue. Pelvic floor dysfunction is not like a lot of women think, oh, there's something wrong with me, right? They start to internalize it, like there's something really deeply wrong with me, but actually it's a physical condition. It's not a psychological disorder. It's not an emotional disorder. It's really a physical condition that can be treated naturally with great, great success. And actually the National Institute of Health says first line of defense is natural therapy, not these surgeries that you go and you hear about with these doctors with the meshes and the Botox injections into the vagina, etc. I mean, there's so many things right now. So you can always check out a pelvic floor physical therapist. You can always take a program like mine that awakens your inner queen so you know how to do your self-care on yourself. It really depends, but my thing is always check out, make sure there's nothing organically wrong. You're not organically, but something in the system. And then after that, just really consider it a muscle, like any other muscle in the body. Like if you had knots here, what would you do? Trigger point release, you would massage it, you would stretch it. Same principles apply to the pelvic floor.
Well, and that's what was going through my head, and I was going to ask you next that you covered, is it seems like it's a place to hold stress, right? And so, is one way, right, that it might appear, just like the stress I carried a lot in my shoulder blades and in my neck and on my face.
Totally.
That's where I carry stress. And so it's very interesting. And what triggered that, as you said, meditating, right? Which meditation, we know is really to calm the stress, the mind, the body, all of that, really get that deep relaxation. Yeah, I mean, I love hearing about this. So for the men listening, or for the husbands of the women that are listening, talk about how the pelvic floor affects erectile dysfunction and things like that. Because to me, it's the same psychological thing, right? If he's not performing to his tops, well, then it instantly gets into my head. And now I'm thinking about it, and that certainly doesn't help the situation, right? So if that's how can men do the same thing? Is it the same thing as Kegels and reverse Kegels and rolling it out? Are there different things that men can do?
That's a great question, because when I started my practice on Madison Avenue, I always thought it was going to be like a lot of women coming in and I was never going to see a man. But wait, I was really wrong. I have 40% men in my practice. Wow. I had to write a book for them because I couldn't even keep up with the volume. And erectile dysfunction is a big issue that they come to see us. As you know, with men, typically something has to be falling off before they go see a doctor, right? So erectile dysfunction, but some of the men have pain with sitting, or they can't sit through their business meeting because they constantly have to go to the bathroom. Or they're trying to bring down their PSA prostate levels. And sometimes if the pelvic floor muscles are tight, it can skew, it can change those numbers. So we do the same thing, internal pelvic floor massage. We do different types of trigger points on the penis. We go into the perineal body because these muscles are the same in men and women. There's really no, they're basically the same except for the organs, right? So they're very, very, if you read my female book, you can still use it to treat a man.
Well, we had Susan Bratton on, so she was very clear in describing the innie and the outie, but it's the same thing, right?
Yes.
So you have the same stuff, it just represents itself differently between the two.
Totally.
For sure.
Totally.
So one other thing that you talk about that I'm interested in the connection, I talked about the pelvic floor sounding a lot like the gut, but there really is a connection there. Digestion and the gut go hand in hand, right? So tell us about the pelvic floor and digestion. You talk about this quite a bit, but share with our listeners about that connection there.
Yeah, that's a great question, Terry, because sometimes you can have the best nutrition, taking the best supplements, doing everything right. And everything is like, you're like wondering what's going on. There's something like I can't go to the bathroom, or I'm going to the bathroom too much, or maybe there's a hesitation in urination, which happens, or you feel like there's something always in the bladder. And it typically is because the pelvic floor muscles are too tight, too weak, or a combination of. So we're thinking, oh, we're constipated, and we're like, oh, wow, it's got to be malnutrition. But I would say maybe it's because the pelvic floor muscles are too tight. And in order to defecate and urinate, you have to really open up and release, right? And let go. So that's the big connection there that I think can be some confusion for individuals who are just doing everything so perfectly fine, but maybe they still have digestive issues. Also, the microbiome, in the digestive area does affect the pelvic floor, right? So a lot of women are yeasty, or they're burning, or they have a lot of like sensations of discharge. If the microbiome is off, it's going to affect the pelvic floor. So you have to heal both simultaneously. I'm a big believer in gut healing for pelvic floor healing, and pelvic floor healing for gut healing, because they have this synergistic relationship, right? And so I think treating both at the same time maximizes the success and the results for women and men,
Oh, interesting. We've heard time and time again now on the podcast from so many people that we've spoken with, how much the gut impacts whatever they're talking about. The gut impacts this, the gut impacts that. Like, the gut is truly a powerhouse for our body. And, it doesn't really surprise me to hear you say that, because the more and more I learn, the more and more I talk with people, the more and more research I do, it's like the gut. If the gut's healthy, everything else is healthy. And, it's just fascinating that in this conversation, the pelvic floor, and you're thinking there's no connection there, and it ties back to the gut. Once again, it's just a common recurring theme that we talk about here on the podcast. And, I just don't think we can say it enough to people. Now here we are talking about the pelvic floor and gut health and the microbiome. Like, get your gut health right. It's going to fix so many issues in your life, including this. So really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things as you're talking, like I probably know too much about some people, but knowing that they're constipated. And then I think back to, are they tight there? And I can think how maybe their relationship is unhealthy, right? Or something's happened there. And so there's tightness, like you said, to protect yourself and to not let in or be vulnerable, right? And so and the pelvic floor is not something prior to us doing this podcast, is not anything I've ever thought of, and really paid much mind to. And you said earlier, right? These are conversations that people don't want to talk about and they're shy about it, but it's our flawed culture in the sense that don't talk about religion, don't talk about money, don't talk about politics, don't talk about sex. Those are all the things we should be talking about, right?
I agree.
If somebody tells you don't talk about it, start talking about it, and so I'm loving this. I know our listeners are loving it, because it's not a conversation. It's being had out in the open.
Yeah, for sure. And the beautiful thing is, Isa, that you're doing so much work behind the scenes and out in the open. You're constantly putting things together, constantly working on things to help people, give them resources and information to benefit them in their lives when it comes to this specific issue. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that they can go to, information that you have that can help them and aid them in their journey in this particular aspect of their health.
Well, thank you so much for asking that. My mission is to heal 1 million women, or to help them heal themselves, because I'm not the guru, I'm not none of that. But I do master classes, and I have one that's coming up. So definitely what I do there is I provide beautiful content. Like, I give you everything. It's called 5 Steps to Happier Lady Parts. And I just give you everything. I give you a beautiful book if you join. And then I ask women to join me on a journey. If they're up to it and they want to join my program, then I give them an invitation also. So they can go to that. That's pelvicpainrelief.com/masterclass. And then I think you guys are going to put a link on it too.
We will, for sure.
Yeah, perfect. And so that's one of the things that I do. I do a lot of Facebook Lives. Like, you can always catch me on Facebook Live. I just did one talking about the hot topic, right? That's going to bring, like, to me, is about, okay, how do I help women get courage around this topic, which is so, shrouded in shame, right? That makes us feel less than. So I just go out there and I'm always talking about the pelvic floor and what you can do to protect yourself. So Facebook is a great thing. Go to my website. You can see all my programs there, pelvicpainrelief.com. And I mean, that's all I got. I mean, my stuff is simple.
Yeah, simple is good. People need simple when it comes to their body. It's sometimes just knowing the simple information that can make such a big change can be so much more powerful for people. So I love that. And let me just be clear. You said this earlier in the podcast, but you said if men are suffering from this issue as well, I know it's like a lot of women talk about it, but men are suffering from it as well. They can also benefit from the masterclass and do some of those same things.
Oh, absolutely. I invite everyone to come to this masterclass, everyone. Because remember that we're just like, oh, men are so much different than we are. No, we're just humans,
Yeah.
you know, with the same muscles and the same things, you know. And like, I have a lot of students, I train a lot of students and doctors and stuff, and they're like, oh my God, it's so different, the pelvic floor of a man from a woman. I'm like, no, it's not. This is just your hang up. You're bringing your hang up into this, you know. So I invite everyone to come to the masterclass, because it's, you know, it's going to give you tools that you can do, very actionable tools right away. It can awaken something, can spark something to create, you know, this journey into healing that I believe that all women are queens, and all women need to control and rule their queendom, right? And the queendom begins with the pelvic floor, and then everything else is going to come out of that, you know? So, yeah.
So powerful. So let me ask you the last question today. I'm starting to ask this of everyone who comes on the podcast. What is the one thing, if you could tell the world and everyone could hear it about your mission and what you're passionate about, what is the one thing you would say to people today when it comes to their health?
Wow. I think the one thing, that's an amazing question. The one thing that I would say is that you hold the key for your own inner healing, that no one is above you, that no one, that you must, that I think when we listen to our gut and to our intuition, and when we trust ourselves to be able to make the right choices for us, then that is the medicine, right? The medicine is to be able to come in and be like, yeah, I got this. I know what to do to help myself. And so I believe in relentless self-care. Because when you have that, then you take your power back. And self-care is not an indulgence or selfish. It's really it's an act of political warfare. I mean, this is where we're at right now, you know, with everything that's happening in the world. So I think that I would like to let everybody know that they hold the key to their own healing.
So beautiful. And it's so powerful. Self-care is not selfish. It is the greatest gift we can give to ourselves. I learn that more and more every single day. We can do more. We can be more impactful in the world. We can take our missions, like your beautiful mission and what you're doing, and take it out to the world when we're right with ourselves first, with our health, with our bodies, with our minds, with our emotions. Self-care is so incredibly powerful in being able to live our very best life and be super healthy through our entire life. So I love that message. I think that's so powerful.
Well, I mean, we hear all the time, right? You can't love somebody else until you love yourself, right? Yet we're also confronted from a childhood age, always share. Don't be selfish. Don't keep on to that. And so we grow up with these belief systems that we shouldn't be selfish and we should give, give, give. And the reality is that's what burns you down. That's where dis-ease comes from in a lot of ways, is not caring for yourself, not putting yourself first. There is nothing selfish about going to the gym, about working out, about eating healthy, about telling your kids to stay in the other room for 30 minutes so you can meditate, right? That all of that stuff makes it so that you can take care of everything else better, right? And everything else in your life becomes better when you take care of yourself. And so I love the message. I think the other thing too is you're like what you said, you're responsible for your body. It's on you. Get educated, put together a team of people. This is your body, right? Be the, and I know Terry Ann's used this reference before, but be the CEO of your body.
Yes.
Put together your executive team, right? So I've got my naturopath. I've got my physical therapist or massage therapist. I have somebody that's going to, help me in all these different ways. My yoga teacher, my personal trainer. I've got, you're the CEO. You own your body. And if you don't take that ownership, then where do you expect your business to go? Where do you expect your body to go? What's going to happen next?
And I have to give credit to Julia, who was on our podcast, who was actually the one who said that, but she overcame all of these issues to regain her health. And she said that, like, be the CEO of your own body, take back control of your life. Only you can do it, and so it's so funny. I'm working with a personal trainer. I was working with him this morning, and he said, everybody wants this stuff, but no one's just going to give it to you. You have to go and take it. Just like you, Isa, we live in this day and age of all this information. You're putting all this information out there to help people. And what you said here at the end to people around their health, we live in an age where there's no excuse for not taking care of your body. The information is just out there everywhere. The people like yourself who are putting things together to benefit people from their health. We have a wealth of knowledge like we've never had before. And I just think it's really, really powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bells. I
Yeah,
mean, so beautiful. I'm so excited. I love you guys.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
a-
love this
Well,
podcast.
likewise, we love hearing about you.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. I mean, and I love that we're having it. It's been so awesome to have you on. I really want to make sure that people understand too, when they go to your website, there is tons of free information, right? So when you go to pelvicpainrelief.com/masterclass, masterclass being one word, you're not just instantly having to pull out your credit card and go buy a bunch of stuff. There's tons of free content on there. There's tons of information.
Yeah.
We deliver this podcast for free. We're not, we don't benefit other than for the sake of spreading knowledge, spreading information so others can get healthy. And that's what you're doing, right? You're doing that on your website. And people can go there and learn a lot and start healing themselves without any kind of financial commitment or anything like that, correct?
100%. I mean, listen, I mean, I'm like this big giver, maybe because I'm Latina, just want to give, I'm Puerto Rican. But I have this thing about like what the energy that you put out there in the universe is what you get back. And when you give for the sake of giving, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, of course, I want to make money. Everybody does, and that's not the issue. But I believe that first, I have to be loyal to my mission. I have to be authentic to what I want to do in the world, right? And so I mean, there's so much. There's like the pelvic starter kit. There's the Kegel list. I mean, I give it all away, all of it, and I know that it creates this like forward momentum when women have this sofa where they can trust themselves again, and then they can say, yeah, I can do that technique. She explained it well. I can do that for myself. I can help myself. And it's like the spark that creates the fire, then unleashes the inner queen, right? So for me, it's kind of like, yeah, why not do that? Why not have this beautiful podcast where you bring these dynamic people in here and do it for the sake of doing it?
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. So if you're listening again, it is pelvicpainrelief.com/masterclass. If you're listening in your car or somewhere, where you don't have time to go through it, plug it into the URL and, pull over, put it into your web browser on your phone. That way you come back to it another time because it's affecting a lot of people, and people could be a lot happier and healthier if they follow a lot of the suggestions that you give them.
Yeah, totally. And with this particular masterclass, it's pretty fantastic because I really cover things that are not covered. I say, oh, how can I make this even better than before? So I cover things that are like, you get actionable, but a lot of people don't know about. So it's going to blow some people's minds. It's going to be good.
Love it.
It's going to be good. It's going to be turbo.
Awesome.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. For those listening, if you want to see the show notes, the transcripts, watch the video, go to empoweringyouorganically.com. As always, subscribe on iTunes to our podcast. You'll never miss an episode. And we have just so many more dynamic interviews that are coming up. People like Isa that are on here that are changing the game, that are having conversations that other people don't want to have. We're having them right here on this podcast. So subscribe at iTunes, empoweringyouorganically.com. We'll have all of the links to Isa's website, some of her different books. All of that will be linked on our website as well. And Isa, I just couldn't thank you enough. It takes a lot of bold courage to have the conversations you're having and to have them with the world. And you're making the world a better place. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. I really appreciate that. You guys are making the world a better place too. Namaste.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks everybody for listening.
Have a great day, everyone.